So let's start with a little bit of practice. So I invite you to get comfortable, seated, standing, lying down, whatever's supportive for your body. Maybe just taking a moment to roll your shoulders or your neck, take a deep breath. Just whatever helps your body to feel at ease, to arrive, and to find a position that you can feel relatively okay in being still. In your own time, you can let your eyes close or just lower your gaze. And maybe if you like, taking a deep breath or two. So just breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your mouth in a long, slow, thin stream of air. Feeling that downshifting in your body as you exhale, even lengthening the exhalation a little bit. Receiving the air on the next in-breath. Filling the lungs, and then again, releasing, softening, coming to stillness inside as you breathe out. Allowing the mind and body to settle is a natural process. It's a natural process, and our job is to help create the conditions inside that allow that process to unfold. And so getting comfortable, growing still, and kind of signaling to our nervous system with these deep breaths that we're safe enough, that we can step back and disengage from the drive to get something done or figure it out, make it work. It's like offering our heart, our body, a gift of time and space to just be. And so initially, one of the things we can do is to just receive that gift. How do you do that? And see if you can let it register in your heart. The sense of nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one you have to be, nothing to get or have. It can help to feel the weight of your body or the ground beneath you, or even to tune into your breathing and feel that steady rhythm coming and going. It was like being out on a hot day and you come to a tree. There's some cool shade and you decide to just sit down, rest in the cool shade. And then there's nothing you need to do but just enjoy the coolness. You feel it on your skin. And so in the same way, we step back from the pressure, the busyness, heartache, complexity of our lives. And just for a few moments, we retreat into the cool shade of the heart, cool shade of presence. It doesn't mean that everything feels good, that our problems go away. But instead of getting spun out, we're just trying to make it work. How is it to just step back inside and let everything be just as it is? Feeling the body, feeling the breath, easeful. So we step back, create some space to just be, to settle, to rest in that cool shade. And then sometimes it can help to even consciously nourish the heart, to introduce something that will lift our spirits, gladden the mind, or nourish us. So this is like taking out a container of fresh water, having a sip. Recognize that maybe the throat's parched. We need some nourishment. Life's hard. So much hurts inside. So much we can't do that we would like to do around the world. So just bringing to mind anything that lifts your heart. A moment in nature, connection with a friend, favorite poem, spring tulip, the smell of the air in the morning. Allow your heart's memory or imagination to offer some nourishment, that glass of clean water for your spirit. And so then whatever comes, some image, some memory, something you're looking forward to, so just begin to linger here, to drink in the nourishment, holding that memory or image in your mind's eye, and really feeling, sensing its effects in your body. Like drinking the water and really feeling its coolness in your mouth, in your throat, deep down in your belly. Letting this moment of goodness soothe and cool your heart right here and now. Settling the heart, clearing the mind. These are natural processes. Our job is to create the conditions to allow them to unfold. And then to use the clarity, the energy, the stillness that arises to understand our life and our place in this world, to look more deeply, and allow ourselves to be moved by compassion. And whenever you're ready, gently let your eyes open. Thank you so much for joining me for that. I'd like to explore together today um, some of the tools that we have at our disposal to find our balance and find our way in the midst of an ever-changing, often heartbreaking, beautiful world. When I first started practicing meditation many years ago now, one of my first teachers, a man by the name of Anagarika Munindraji, Indian man who I met over there in Bodh Gaya, he was fond of saying, if you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. So this is a very basic, pragmatic approach of what we now today call kind of modern mindfulness practice and the larger arena of the Buddhist path out of which modern mindfulness practice arose. This is a very simple invitation to look more carefully at our experience as a way of understanding it and then figuring out what do I want to do here? How and why do we suffer? What's my purpose or role in life? The challenge, of course, is that today there are so many obstacles to sitting down and observing your mind. On top of just the unrelenting force of the habits in our mind, the pace of our lives, the amount of demands on our time and energy, the influence of technology and screens and the media and advertising, and then this kind of overwhelming influx of information about the pain in our world. From the human realm to the more than human realm to ecosystems themselves. And yet, even within this tangle of challenge and overwhelm and difficulty, mindfulness is innate. It only takes a moment to wake up, to come back to presence, and then to begin strengthening our capacity to find some clarity and calm within the midst of the storm. So this is one of the first and most essential teachings of any contemplative practice, is that not only do we have an inner life, but we actually have the power to influence it, that we can take steps to reclaim our attention, to exercise agency over where we place our attention, externally, internally, and begin to actually understand what's happening, to sit down and observe. So the first kind of tool or skill that I want to highlight here is this one that we explored just as we arrived together, of settling, of stepping back and just downshifting a little bit. This is an essential life skill that's becoming more and more necessary to handle the overwhelm, the pressure, the grief, the fear, the heart sickness of being alive and conscious on the planet right now. And this is not just about becoming more comfortable or taking care of ourselves. It's not an escape. Developing calm, coming back into balance, settling our heart and mind is urgently necessary to establish enough clarity to understand where and how to respond. It's a step in the process. It's not the end. So where we get off track is when we take this tool of settling, calming, downshifting, And we stop there, and it becomes like a drug, right? We get home at the end of the day and we're so frazzled, so I'm just going to do my breathing and calm down. And now I feel relatively okay enough to go back to my life. If that's all that we do, we're using these tools to just become more comfortable in a world that's coming apart at the seams, that desperately needs each of us to stay awake and offer our compassionate presence and action. If we don't slow down, find some balance and clarity inside, we just sink or we add to the problem. We react out of anger or fear or hatred, and we just stoke the fire. Thich Nhat Hanh shared the story when he was alive of refugees leaving Vietnam, seeking safety, seeking shelter. Analogy for all those today fleeing persecution, war, climate disaster, whether it's in boats or over land. And the conditions were precarious. Many people died, as they still do today, refugees seeking asylum. And he said, if just one person in one of those boats is able to stay calm and see clearly, they can save many lives. Instead of panicking, people will listen to them and they can help actually get through those stormy seas. And then he goes on to say that our world today is like a small boat. We're all connected, and there's so much danger that's imminent. So our world desperately needs people who can see clearly, who are not panicked, overwhelmed, frightened, but actually connected to their body, to their heart, to their values. Not because I'm going to save the world, but because if I'm not, what am I doing? Either hiding, ignoring, going through the motions, hoping everything's going to be okay, rather than looking around and seeing, who can I help? Where can I help? How can I help? What's needed for me, for my family, for my community, for others. So this is the first skill, is just downshifting, settling, establishing some clarity and calm inside. Now, as I said in the meditation, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes we can't get there. It's too hard. We're too exhausted. We're too frightened. We're too overcome with grief or rage. We need some medicine. We need something to catalyze a shift inside, something to help us recall the mysterious gift of being alive, the wonder and the beauty of just being able to take in a breath and see the trees or hear the wind or hold hands with someone. We need that medicine to help us come back to a place inside that feels okay, okay enough, and that knows our heart's strength and goodness. So this is about lifting. It's about gladdening, nourishing our heart. How do we do that? Well, this is the beauty of contemplative practice, which is much broader than meditation. Meditation is one kind of contemplative practice. Contemplative practice is anything that connects us with meaning, with purpose, with our values, and that supports us to actively shape our own heart and mind. It understands that everything we're doing, everything we're thinking and saying, the way we're living every day is laying down patterns, reinforcing certain ways of being. And that as we use mindfulness to pay attention, we can start to choose what ways of being do I want to keep engaging and strengthen? Which ones do I want to let go of and put down? And what new ways of being do I want to cultivate? Do I want to live with a heart of gratitude? Do I want to cultivate more generosity or patience or courage or tenderness? This is possible. But it takes slowing down, attending to our hearts, gladdening our hearts, and then understanding, how do I want to live? So going back to my first teacher, Munindraji, another thing that he said once, some students asked him, why do you meditate? So Munindraji he was known as what's known as an acharya. An acharya is it's like a PhD in Buddhism. He memorized the entire Pali Canon and could recite from memory. He studied and trained intensively for a number of years in Burma. He was a highly respected meditation master, teacher, scholar. Why do you meditate? Good question. His answer, I meditate so that when I'm walking to town, I don't miss the little purple flowers by the side of the road. Enlightenment, saving all sentient beings, all of these lofty, noble aspirations for meditation, spiritual practice. Little purple flowers. How much are we missing in our lives because we're too busy, too consumed by our own thoughts or emotions or the news? Are we able to actually notice and receive the nourishment, the goodness that's present, that's available right here and now? To wake up to this beautiful mystery that's unfolding every day. Those of you who have practiced with me before or get my newsletters know that I'm a relatively new father. A toddler is just over a year and a half old. And anyone who spent time with a toddler knows this is a powerful teacher in presence and wonder. These daily reminders of the freshness of life, just being able to marvel at a flower, a pebble, a bird, a little berry on a tree. So this is the second tool, this is the second invitation that I want to offer, of using our practice to slow down enough to actually notice the blessings of our lives. Again, not to try to escape, to try to avoid or pretend, but quite the opposite. To strengthen ourselves so that we have this very firm, broad, deep basis inside from which to greet and engage with our life. This is possible. Small moments of joy available every day. Seeing the sun come through the window, the blessing of clean running water. Appreciating a meal, connection with a friend. As we start to practice in this way, it opens the possibility of bringing a deeper kind of meaning into the ordinary daily activities of our lives. Walking to the post office, doing the laundry, cutting some vegetables. Instead of just getting through to the next thing, we can use these activities to lift the heart and to shape our inner life, cultivating generosity, presence, care, appreciation, joy, not so much by what we're doing, but by paying attention to how we're doing it and bringing these qualities forward into these ordinary activities. And it doesn't take any more time. We're already walking to the post office, doing the laundry, cutting the vegetables. This is the great invitation and gift of contemplative practice, is to take an active role in making the most of our time on the planet. By realizing our potential as human beings, by recognizing that we have these capacities to be present, to be aware of blessings, to offer generosity, kindness, compassion, empathy, care, to take care of ourselves in a deep way. It's not easy. It's possible. So where does all this leave us? We slow down, gather ourselves, take in some medicine, we nourish, we gladden the heart, we lift our spirits. Why? This is the key question. Why? Why are you here right now? Why did you sign up? How come you're not doing something else right now? Something's important to you. What is that? This is about our vision for what's possible for ourselves, for one another, for our children, for our world. I like to spend a lot of time outside with my son. Take walks here in the neighborhood. Look at the flowers. He likes to pick berries. Listen to the birds. The natural world is not just his playground. It's like a companion and a teacher. When he's upset and inconsolable, if my wife or I pick him up and take him outside on the front porch, just the feeling of the wind, the sound of the leaves, the vitality, the aliveness of the world just shifts his whole nervous system. And yet I know that life on this planet is collapsing. Ecosystems, species. I know that I cannot protect my son from the pollution in our air, in our water, in our food, microplastics, hormones. I know that the trajectory of global warming will place us in a very different world when he comes of age in 20 years. One of my aspirations is to be the best father and husband I can be. It's one of my primary purposes in my life right now. And that means doing all I can to protect the natural world, raising awareness of the urgency of this threat and trying to inspire others to take action. That's me. That's my aspiration. What's yours? Otherwise, what are we doing? All right, so you're slowing down, practicing mindfulness, cultivating gratitude and compassion. Wonderful. Why? Where's it going? What's your purpose? What's your aspiration? What's your vision? What do you want? What do you want from your life? What do you want from your time here? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for others? For the people you care about? For the animals you care about? For the plants and the rivers and the streams that you care about? This is very important for us to ask this question in a sincere way. And I would suggest it's more important to ask the question and really listen than to have a neat answer that you can sum up in a sentence. Don't worry about that. Just ask and listen. And then trust the process. Trust what comes. The confusion, the fear, the numbness, the overwhelm, whatever it is. That's what you need to pass through. That's what you need to know. Our practice is in service. It's in service of our aspiration, of our vision. Otherwise, it's just kind of a nice dessert. So we've talked about settling, talked about gladdening, lifting, nourishing the heart. We talked about orienting to purpose, vision, aspiration. Last thing I want to talk about is not doing it alone. Find other people, practice with, to talk with, to learn with, to explore with, to grieve with. Quality of our lives is determined largely by our relationships. It helps us cope with stress. It gives us inspiration and encouragement to be our best self. Relationships help us collaborate and do great things. What would it be like to include within our practice, really making it a priority to build more connections, to nourish relationship and friendship? We know that connection is protection when it comes to burnout and stress and overwhelm. We know that the health outcomes of things like loneliness and isolation are tantamount to smoking, if not worse than smoking. Now, even one moment of empathy, connection, real presence with another being can nourish us for years. It doesn't need to be a human being. It could be a tree, a pet, a river. The deeper our relationships, the more energy we have, the more commitment we have. Or it takes us outside of ourselves and our own little world. My father passed away last year, a little over a year, very suddenly on his way home from work. It was really devastating, quite traumatic. And one of the gifts of his passing was a deep reminder and reorientation of my priorities. When we arranged the funeral, we were shocked at how many people from his work showed up, like 40 or 50 people, and how touched and moved they were by their connection with him. I handled his estate, so a lot of phone calls to make, took over his phone, his accounts. Every single person I spoke to who knew my dad, his accountant, his doctors, business associates who would call, told me how much they appreciated their connection with him, how much they were going to miss him, how kind he always was, how they enjoyed their conversations with him. He had his issues. He was a good dad. He was a great dad. He knew how to build relationships. It was one of his strengths. He gave people their full attention. He listened to what they said. He made them feel good about themselves. He asked about their family. He wished them well and meant it. This is possible. This path we're on is hard. It's hard enough to be alive in a human body. It's even harder, I think, in many ways to be living in this modern world in this day and age. And it's even harder to be trying to do that in a conscious way with an open heart. Don't do it alone. Do not. So foster connection, build relationships, make it a priority. Question the incessant focus on being efficient, arriving at an outcome, getting tasks done. Take time to connect. Ask questions and really listen. When someone else is speaking, instead of planning what you're going to say or mind wandering, give them your full attention. This can be nourishing for you rather than draining because you're gathering all your attention. You're actually present. And take small risks to build trust. Feel it out. Share something personal. See how they respond. What's going on for you? How are you doing? So I wanted to offer these 4 different aspects of the path for you to think about and bring into your life to understand the tools that you already have and maybe just start to orient to them and use them in a different way. Being able to settle, to downshift, to take that pause, to breathe, to quiet inside. It's a lift, to gladden, to nourish the heart. Noticing the goodness that's available, bringing to mind a memory, an image, something meaningful for your heart, and just staying with it, receiving that goodness. Remembering why. Not losing sight of how brief our time here is. I was doing some reflecting and planning for this talk and some other talks I've been giving this week, and I came across again the wonderful book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by a palliative care nurse named Bronnie Ware. And I want to offer these in closing as a reminder and some hopefully some inspiration to keep this question alive of what's your vision, what's your aspiration, what's important to you. So the first, she spent time with many people who were in the dying process, and she noticed certain themes that would come up again and again and again as people were reflecting on their life and coming to terms with needing to let go and say goodbye. And the first was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself rather than the life others expected of me. How can we do that if we're not slowing down, lifting our heart, asking deeply what's important to us, and connecting with others, building that support, those relationships? So this was the first, living a life true to myself. Second, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Priorities. Third, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Take a risk. Put something out there. Calculated risk, right? You want to take care of yourself, but just test the waters. Who can you trust? How do you build that trust? 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Who haven't you heard from for a while? Send them a little note. Let them know you're thinking of them. And last, I wish I'd let myself be happier. There's a lot of pain in our world, but there's also a lot of joy. There's also so much goodness, and it's worth celebrating and being a part of. So thank you for your kind attention. Please take what's useful, and what's not, you just leave it here. So we have a little bit of time now to have some conversation, hear from you. How's this landing? What questions do you have? So Margaret's going to join and moderate. Thanks so much, Margaret.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Mm.
Thank you. Our first question is from Lori, and she asks, do we notice the pain in life equally strongly as we notice the beauty when we learn to meditate and slow down? I assume that both are necessary to a contemplative meditator. What is your way of protecting yourself from the pain? Lori, please feel free to share if there's any more context to this question.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you. I know that there are some meditation techniques. I think Pema Chodron teaches Tonglen something to do with pain and giving and taking pain and releasing it. And I wondered what you might say about something like that, because some of the things that, that come suddenly and are so painful every night on the news are just overwhelming. And it's hard to sort them out and still be sensitive to the beauty too.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I do think, just to come back to the way you wrote the question, that it's been my experience, both myself and in working with a lot of meditators, that the more we do this practice, the more we feel, period. The spectrum widens. So the highs are higher, the lows are lower, the joy, the beauty, the goodness is richer and fuller, and then also the pain and the sadness is deeper. We do feel it more acutely. In fact, there's a famous analogy that says, when you start practice, suffering is like a hair on your hand, or before you practice, and then as your practice deepens, it's like a hair in your eye. It's the same, but our sensitivity has increased. So I think it's a very apt question. And there are practices, but I think part of it is understanding and reorienting around what this word protection means. Because and some of this is, of course, the limits of language, but our habitual conditioned way of thinking about the protection is this sort of walling off, right? Which is actually the opposite of what's happening in the practice. We are entering into relationship with life more fully and intimately. And yes, because we become so much more open and raw, we do need some form of protection, but it's not a shield. So the kinds of protection, just to use that word, that are available and that the path encourages, one is that within the insight meditation tradition, which comes from early Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, Pema Chodron's Tonglen practices drawing from a later form of Buddhism, the Tibetan practice. The Brahma Viharas, the four divine abodes, these four qualities of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. These are one of the core protections for the heart. So the kindness and the joy, the gladness, lift and nourish us. And compassion and equanimity teach us how to be in relationship and connection with suffering without drowning or getting overwhelmed. Compassion softens the heart. It focuses on the alleviation of the suffering, and equanimity helps us stay balanced and not lose perspective. So those are the practices that I would encourage and cultivate. And equanimity is balance that comes from wisdom. So embedded within equanimity is the deep insight and understanding that comes from our practice of understanding the nature of human life, the moral laws of the universe, that the violence and the harm that we see is a natural result of the causes and conditions that are present historically and personally in modern civilization. There's an understanding present that remove some of the shock. Of course, we're blowing each other up and starving each other, given all of the conditions that are present. This is what you get. If you mix these things together, this is what it produces. It's not justifying it, it's just understanding it instead of being bewildered and lost in it. So those are the core tools. There's more I could say, but I want to also have time to hear from others. So I hope that's helpful, Lori. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next question is going to be from Rebecca. And Rebecca asks, I feel like I can do mindfulness whenever I remember. The problem is I can't always remember. Do you have tips for how we can remember to be mindful when we get overwhelmed?
Yeah. Thanks, Rebecca. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, Kat answered, this is how overwhelmed I am. I can't put it on my phone, obviously, but when she said Google Calendar, then it hit me. I could put it on the computer at work.
Yeah.
Because that sound won't interfere with the session. And I'll maybe still hear it when I'm not in a session.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the crux of the practice, right? So feeling very connected to Menindraji today, he's coming to mind again, and he used to say, his practice is simple, not easy. It's very simple, a moment of awareness, seeing clearly what's happening from moment to moment. But it's not easy. It's hard to do, hard to remember, right? And when we're gone, we're gone. So this is kind of the beauty, though, of the path, because it invites us to be creative, to actually get curious and explore, how do I remember? How do I come back? And so my book, that all of these teachings I'm sharing are from my book, this whole process I'm sharing of settling, gladdening, aspiration, relationship. These are all different aspects of the book. And the book is structured around this very question of how do we remember and practice in our day-to-day life. So I'll share 3 concrete tips that you and everyone here can experiment with. So the first is get really familiar with how it feels to be present. Notice how you experience yourself and life when you're here. The more clearly you take note of that again and again and again in deeper and more vivid ways, the more quickly you're going to notice when you're not here, because you have that reference point, that felt reference point. It's like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like when I'm not, running around like a chicken with its head cut off. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, when you notice that you're gone, appreciate that you noticed. Instead of beating yourself up, celebrate. Woohoo, I'm back. All right, mindfulness returned. Whether it's been an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, you're back. That's good news. Appreciate it. This creates a positive feedback loop. It makes us want to come back, because every time we come back, we're greeted with open arms. Hey, welcome back. All right, good. Even if it's only for a moment. So appreciate and celebrate the return of awareness, rather than judging and criticizing yourself, and I'm such a miserable failure, and how am I going to ever da-da-da-da-da. That's the second. The third is get creative with how you remember. Set up little rituals, put reminders in your day. So, a calendar reminder, an alarm on your phone. Sometimes when I'm trying to do focused work and also stay balanced or cultivate a certain quality, I'll set a timer on my phone, 20 minutes. And every 20 minutes, I'll just pause, even as just for a breath, to come back to like, okay, how am I doing this? Right? That sense of not what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And we need reminders. So be creative, set them up for yourself. Create little rituals throughout your day, every meal, every time you leave or enter the house or apartment, as ways of remembering. Those are a few tips for you. I hope that's helpful, Rebecca. Thanks. Yeah. But we'll see. We have time for maybe one more.
Wonderful. Okay. Let's see. I think the next one that we'll choose is actually an anonymous question, so I'm going to read it. So this being says, I had that one thing that got me out of bed every day, no matter what. I was a caregiver for over 40 years out of love and obligation. I am no longer a caregiver. How do I find that thing that is beyond me, that keeps me going no matter what now? I have felt very lost without that thing.
Thank you for your question, for your sincere inquiry. How beautiful that, you were able to feel that sense of purpose for so long and offer that caregiving in spite of the obligation, that you were still able to connect with the purpose and the love. What a gift. How do we reorient when we're lost, right? I think it takes a lot of courage and patience. So I think the first thing is perhaps just having some compassion for yourself, for the place you find yourself in, and how difficult it can be to not know, feel lost, like you don't have that sense of purpose. So just to really arrive fully in that space of not knowing with some tenderness. That would be the first encouragement I could offer, is to just honor that you're in a hard place and to bring tenderness to it. And what if discerning what that is for you now required going through this kind of inner landscape of feeling lost and not knowing? In other words, instead of this being a problem or a barrier, what if this were actually the core part of the process? As you start to reorient how you're experiencing it, understanding it's completely normal and natural, it's hard and it's okay. And can I bring some tenderness and patience to the process? And some of that could be supported through friendship, through conversation, or connection with other beings, including nature. And then what's coming to mind to share is an image from a story that I heard about the ancient Polynesian sailors who navigated from Polynesia to Hawaii. These were ancient mariners who didn't have modern navigation tools, maps. They had an intuition and a vision of the islands. And these master sailors could feel that the islands were there. And they talked about the process of navigation as one of pulling the island from the sea, staying connected to their vision, their inner knowing, and their trust as they navigated towards it. Can you imagine getting in these canoes, going off into the sea for weeks based on a gut feeling, a vision, and using that to navigate there? And yet I often feel like these days there's so much uncertainty in our world collectively. In addition to those of us who find ourselves in a place like the place you're in, of not knowing, that our vision for where we want to go, sometimes it's not clear. We just have a feeling that we need to trust, that we can navigate towards, and it's like we pull it out of the sea. So to be open to the possibility that what that one thing is might look or feel different. It might not be as clear right away as it has been in other parts of your life, but that you can still have a sense of moving in a certain direction. And it comes, as I was saying during the talk, from the sincerity of your listening and trusting the process. I hope that's helpful. So as we shift towards closing, I'd like to just offer one thing. If we're meeting for the first time, I'm so happy that we had this chance to spend a little time together. And if you want to stay in touch, one of the best ways to do that is through my newsletter. And I don't send a lot of emails. I'm a new parent. I don't have the time to send a lot of emails, but I try to send like one a month. And it's just a way to stay in touch, hear about what I'm thinking about, what's happening, ways to connect. So that's on my website. And of course, if you want to learn more about the perspectives and teaching I'm offering today, my new book, Your Heart Was Made for This, goes into all of this in more depth with more stories and practices. So Margaret, anything from your end on behalf of Banyan?
Honestly, just deep gratitude. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been, this has been so beautiful, and I deeply appreciate the balance you're holding between presence and action. So thank you so much for everything you've done and everything you continue to do. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us, your energy, your questions. I appreciate the vulnerability. It's been so beautiful to hold the space with you. We will be sending out a recording of this in an email to anyone who RSVP'd for the talk. You can also subscribe to YouTube, which is at Banyan Together. We'll be posting a free trial link into the chat, so please feel free to go ahead and check out more of what we're doing. We actually just launched some new groups that are called Earth Allies, and they go into this question of activism through presence and like true calling. So yes, we would love for you to learn more about that, as well as just Oren's work. So thank you each so much.